G'day, welcome back. Doing another video in my series on corresponding squares today, and the composer we're going to have a look at is Dedrle. Not too sure if that's correct. It's the kind of time when you need Les Murray. So he was another Czech or indeed Moravian composer around about a little bit after the time of Dedrle, who we did just a couple of days ago. So I thought I'd stay on that theme and have a look at some more pawn endgames and of course corresponding squares by these early composers. Okay, so let's quickly go across to capture screen, and it's a bit of a mess here, sorry, but I've done the normal sort of graph busy thing to show where Dedrle shows up. He's there. He's a little bit after Dedrle, perhaps not as far as that's showing, but I'm sort of putting these composers in time based on sort of their average point in their life. But once again, you can see this predominance here of Central European, Austrian, and also some German composers. So that shows you where a lot of the early developments in corresponding squares was going on. So gives you a bit of sense of how they all fit together. And Dedrle, so he straddled the end of the 19th century. And then, of course, there's a section on him in the Arvis website, and that's sort of one of my standard reference points. But I'm just going to continue to look at this article, which I looked at yesterday for Dedrle, but the article itself is mainly about Dedrle. There's his picture, and this is the third position we're going to look at. I think this is his most famous position. Once again, it's one of these endgame studies. Once you've seen them, and you probably see them quite early, you see the solution and you know what the solution is, and then I'm just going to go into a bit of detail about why the solution is what it is. A little bit of article here. Now this is quite strange because this is Czech chess 7, so there must be 6 other early articles which I've got to dig up, because as I'm going along I'm finding more and more interesting sort of composers and things to look at. And there's the position we're going to look at in a little bit. So what I'm going to do today is, let me minimize that. There's actually 4 positions I'm going to look at. Two relatively simple ones, but they demonstrate a point which I think is quite interesting. And then we're going to do the famous position I just showed there, and then finally there's a real stonking great corresponding squares position from Dedrle, which I wasn't familiar with, and I think that's a really good one to go through. So that's sort of the outline of what we're going to be up to today. Let's have a look at this practice position here. This sort of demonstrates one of those points about going the long way around, because if you look at this position, obviously black is going to be able to take that white pawn, and if white is like there when the pawn gets taken, he's obviously going to lose. So white has to work out how to get to the g4 square when black takes the g6 pawn. And we can do some counting, just have a look into in general how this works. Let's have a look. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take 5 squares to get to there, and for the other player, 1, 2, 3, 4. So from a move perspective, because it's white to move, it's okay. Black would take the pawn, and then white would then hop onto the g4 square. But obviously the black king is in the way. And actually there is only one way to draw this position. You've got to go the really long way. So let's go through the move. We've got to go to a c2 first, and obviously black can try and block by also going a diagonal route. And then now once again only one winning move. So now the thing is that if black blocks now and doesn't go straight for the pawn, then white's going to make up a tempo. So now you can see the continuation is that now they've got it. And it's a draw. Okay, so that's the whole point about what's the shortest route. And you can see that if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's also 5 squares. So this backwards route is the way to get to the g4 square in time. I thought that's quite a nice little neat study. Let's have a look at another warm-up position. Okay, this one I thought was quite interesting. It's got a sort of same sort of idea, and black's going to end up one move short. It's actually kind of funny because, first of all, key squares tells us what's going on. The key squares, okay? So obviously black cannot stop white from getting to one of the key squares. I mean, I haven't got it coded up, but let's say, for instance, we went there. Well, white will go there. It's got the opposition, and pick up the key squares, pick up the pawn, and because the white pawns are in the 5th rank, when he takes the e6 pawn, it's already a winning position. Okay, so go back to the start. So therefore, black has to go around the other way and try and get the white pawn going around the other way. So once again, this is simply a pawn counting exercise. So let's do that continuation. King f7, king b7, king g6, king c6, king g5, and now we've got this classic problem, and black is going to lose. I mean, there's mined squares here. There's key squares. That's a key square. That's a key square. Black didn't get there, and we've got these mined squares. These ones here, right? So if white played king to d6, he would lose because black would then play king to f5. King c5 actually draws, but obviously the winning move here is to take the key square. Now black is forced to defend his pawn, and now black has the move. So black is defending his pawn. So white is defending his pawn and attacking the black pawn, and now black loses because he can't keep control of his own pawn, and he's going to lose it. So that's if we go back to the original position, we can see that, okay, so defending by going toward danger doesn't work, and defending by going around the back loses by one move. Oh, that was quite interesting. So there's a couple of sort of simple warm studies. We enjoyed those. And then now we're going to go to the main Dedrle position, which people know, which is this one. Have a quick look at it. If you haven't seen it before, just think about how white might win this position. And it's not quite corresponding squares, but the reason why I want to look at this position is that it's important to reflect through all the continuations where the key squares for the white pawn are, depending upon whether the white pawn is on b2, b3, or b4, and that results in there only being one winning line, and we'll go through a few variations to demonstrate that. Okay, assuming you've had a quick look at that, let's just bring up Keres's analysis of this in Practical Chess Endings. Just at the bottom there, white easily wins the black pawn, and it appears as if king c3, let's go through this line he's showing. King c3, king e5, king b4, king d5, king takes a4. That does win easily because we're already on the key squares, right? So let's go back, but that's not the line. The move which really messes things up is a3. Now, what you got to remember is that one of the drawing strategies here, two drawing strategies for black. One is to stop white from getting on the key squares the pawn, or the other alternative is to turn the b pawn into an a pawn, and as you can see, the black king is inside the square. So that would be a draw. So he plays a3, and the problem now is that if we can see b8 is a draw, but there's two continuations here which you could imagine b3 or b4. Go b3, which is better because it keeps the key squares here. But the problem is it just takes so long. The pawn is in the way. Black pawn is blocking the b2 square. It just takes too long for white to pick up the pawn. You can see black already gets in front and stops white from getting on the key squares. So that's why king to c2 doesn't win. King c1, definitely no good. So king b1, let's have a look at how king b1 goes. We're in sort of Keres's continuation. Now, if you look at where the key squares are at the moment, I'm just going to sort of interpolate what's going on with Keres's analysis, and you can have a look at if black doesn't push his a pawn. 1, 2, 3, and we're already on that key square. 1, 2, 3, just miles away. b3, once again, the only move. Best defensive try. White has two choices. Obviously can't convert it into a rook pawn, same problem. So he can either play b3 or b4. But let's go b3, which is the line Keres gives, and we'll see why. b3, so now if you look where the key squares are, and if you play b4, the key squares will be all the way over there. So you can see what the problem here is. Okay, so now black starts running across his king e5, king a2, king d5, king takes a3, king c5, king a4. And the problem, this classic problem, right, that black can kind of stop white from getting to the key squares, but doesn't help because white gets the opposition, and now away black goes, white will be able to go the other way. And you go just the last bit of Keres. It is clear that with the pawn on b4, this last move would be impossible, whereas we have now reached a well-known winning position. Okay, so that should be, that's a nice little example, and the whole point about that is that if you go back to the original position, the winning strategy is to go around the back, yeah, Now this actually takes longer, but it gets you to the key square which you're going to be looking for before black can come across and defend as the lines show. Okay, good. Okay, hope you enjoyed that one. As I said, it's the main famous Dedrle pawn endgame study, and a lot of reminiscent of all the positions we've looked at before, the Redley one or even the Tina one from a couple of days ago. So let's now look at the final, which is, okay, there's the position without any markup. And as you can see, I mean, there's been a couple of earlier moves, but this is the main position where corresponding squares comes into it. It is white to play and draw, and it really is classic corresponding squares. The thing is, if black ever pushes his f-pawn, that'll just get picked off. That won't really help. And you can see that just spend a little bit of time looking at it. I would sort of highlight as a tip. You can see this structure here, and we've seen that before in colors reversed, and you can remember that obviously there was a very strong prominence on the shortest path as a part of the solution to corresponding squares. So with that in mind, just have a look at it, think about it, and solve it, and then we'll plot it out. Okay, first off, we have to mark out the key squares. I think we can safely say that d6 is a key square because then the white pawn would drop, and also g7 is a key square. If we got to g7, then because the pawn is covering the g5 square, we would eventually get to g6 or h6, and then either shepherd our pawn and pick up the e-pawn. So that would be a relatively easy win. That's the key squares. We're going to be trying to now map out the corresponding squares to them. Now I'm just following the analysis on the web page here. You can see he's mapped it all out. So I've done that already. So let's have a look and go through it one by one. Okay, so if we are on f8, gr8 or h8, then white obviously has to get to g6 or h6 to block access to the key square there. And on the other side of the board, if black's on c7, then we have got to be on d5. Okay, so now let's do the shortest path analysis. So c7, d8, e8, f8, and then white would have to match that with e4, f5, and g6. Okay, so that's good. So white can cover. The paths have the same length. And then I think on the other side, we just got to clean this up here. So actually, that's the square. Could have actually been, just to cover the key square there, could have actually been sitting on c5 as well, but now that doesn't work because you have to be able to run back. I'll put that in anyway, kind of the way I was analysing before. Okay, so now what's the next one we need to look at? We need to look at what happens if g8 squared, because it gets a bit trickier now. We've got to be able to move from 5 and to 1 and cover g7. So that's a square for that. Good, we've got that square covered. So we've got everything covered on the king side. That's excellent. Now let's go to the queen side. How do we cover these squares? c8 can go to a 6 or a 3. Okay, you're doing that square. And then b7 can go to a 6 or an 8. So need to be there. And b8 need to go to a 9 or a 6 or an 8. So that means we need to be there. And the final square in the corner, just cover everything, because sometimes that final square which kills you. But in this case, no, we've got a few choices. We can actually go there. Right, so that's the layout of our corresponding squares. And you can see the white can cover everything that black's doing, because basically white's got the space and black doesn't. So that's all good. And then I just I did a few lines here, just moving the kings around. King to a8. So we've got to go. You can see I've actually mapped out. There's a few other Z squares which could go to king to c8, got to go back to d4, d8, e4, e8, f5, f8, g6, g8, so go right across to h6, h8, need to pop back to g6, to keep on covering the key square there, cover, and now if black starts moving back, well, you can imagine keep moving back. So basically white can cover all of black's maneuverings, and it is a draw. Right, so that was pretty interesting corresponding squares. You can see it's a little bit, some of these corresponding squares will have been sort of convoluted, because obviously these 4 pawns on the queen side are obviously there to sort of focus your attention, basically looking at the access through the C and the D files on the queen side and the G and the H files on the king side. Okay, so I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you learned a little bit, particularly the 4 studies we've done from Dedrle, right? Obviously, very active composer from Central Europe around that sort of time, turn of the 19th, 20th century, and 4 interesting studies, 2 simple ones, the really famous one, and this corresponding squares one, which until I came across it, I wasn't familiar with, and I found that very interesting, sort of going through the analysis of it. So I hope you enjoyed that, and thank you very much for watching.